creating extension materials, effective extension materials.
We'll get there. Has everybody got the handout? While everyone's got the handout, yes, thumbs up. Hi, everybody. Yeah, Tim, Pete, great, you got them. Tiara, great. You guys have them here? Excellent. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay. There we go, yeah. Okay. There we go.
Okay. All right.
Great. Okay, hello again, everybody. So you've had a session with Brenda, so I'm going to try and get through this even quicker, because I know you're all super busy. So what are we going to talk about? Very quickly, last week, does anybody remember what we talked about last week? Workshops. Excellent, excellent. One thing from each of you very, very quickly about workshops. Go, go, go. Think about it. One thing you recall about workshops. Tiara.
Target your audience.
Excellent. Timothy.
Make it simple.
Great. Pete.
Focus on your objective.
Excellent. Brad. I think you're muted. At least that's a good excuse.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. I am thinking, I'm trying to find my notes because I can't remember a salient point right now.
It's extremely unfair of me to do this to you.
Work on your feet. Unexpected things happen, so just be prepared to make changes if you need to.
Just like you just did. Fantastic. Nick and Zach?
People have really short attention spans.
People have really short attention spans.
Make it useful for your audience.
Make it useful for your audience. Excellent. Great. Okay, so let's push along. So, you know, the bottom line is, in the end, we're wanting to know how we help farmers like this. And as we said with the workshop, you're starting with the audience, very different backgrounds, literacy, etc. So we're going to look a bit at that today. But first of all, what is extension? On the top of your sheet, it says extension is getting blank to farmers so that they can make a positive blank. What are your guesses on the missing words? Extension is getting what to farmers?
Information to farmers.
Information is a possibility. There is no right or wrong on this. I'm going to give you an answer that I think any of these are fine. Someone else?
The research findings.
Research findings. Skills. These are all good. Maybe one more. Resources, okay. So these are all quite reasonable things. So it's actually about getting all those. I've got a word that hopefully captures all of those. So we're getting something to farmers so they can make a positive what?
Change.
Change, yeah, that's exactly it. So that's really what it's about. There is no single definition for extension, but this is the one I tend to operate off. It's about getting knowledge, and associated with that knowledge is going to be skills and resources, all the things you said. You know, that knowledge will typically come from research, etc. So that's what we're trying to do. It's about a process of change. So the objectives for today, be able to recall and use the Ask Me framework to design extension materials, and we'll look at that, and to be able to recall the key elements of the fact sheet. Okay, let's push on. Very quickly, on the top of the page there, it says, why are promoted technologies not adopted? What do you think? Think about, just take a few moments, jot down some ideas you have there, and then I'm going to come around and ask you all. So why are promoted technologies not adopted? When you've got a couple scribbled down, just give me a thumbs up. Okay, 1 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's start with that then. So just go. I'll call out your name if that's okay. And so Nick.
They're not durable or reliable.
Not reliable is 1. Tiara.
They're not educated on how to use a new technology.
Right. So what would another be like on how would you say that slightly differently?
They need training
Right.
on the new technology.
So I'll put not trained correctly. That's good. Timothy?
I think people are very reluctant to change.
Okay, so just the whole resistance to change. That's very good. Pete?
They might not be convinced by the technology that it's useful.
Excellent. Not convinced. Zach?
Cultural.
So,
I remember, I think it was the D Lab talking about like little playgrounds that get water out of the ground and like designed for kids, but women were the ones actually in the water. So they didn't want to go on a little Ferris wheel to power the pump or something like that.
so somehow there's cultural, so what we might say is it's not appropriate, not culturally appropriate then?
Yeah.
Culturally, and not culturally appropriate. Last one, Brad?
It's too expensive.
Too expensive. Okay, excellent. These are all really good. The reason I want us to think about that is obviously we've got a list then that we should keep in mind as you're thinking about developing extension material. And the thing that astounds me time and time again is that people go out and they make a recommendation and they don't think about simple things. Because what tends to happen is you tend to go into a village and you see an opportunity and you go, I've got an idea. And you become so caught up in your idea that you don't step back from it and just evaluate and impersonally evaluate. And it always astounds me, sitting here, hopefully you're going, duh. But you see it in the real world again and again and again, because when you're out there, you're busy. You've got a whole bunch of other stuff going on and you simply don't have time for it. So I would really encourage you to keep those things in mind. Things like, and we'll discuss this a little bit more, but making sure it's, what's the cost? Is it culturally appropriate? Is it reliable? Have they been trained correctly? And I really like Timothy's one. They just might not want to change. I don't care how good your idea is. I don't want to change. And so you've got to think about those cultural aspects. Well, what do I want to do if it's going to help them? And the other one is they're not convinced by it. It's like, you got an idea, but I don't see the benefit. So let's push on a little bit with that and see what we can come up with. Okay. So you just saw it. So I'm going to ask you again in the little box halfway down, good solutions, and this is really, this sentence comes from a fair amount of research and I've tried to distill it down. Good solutions show something benefit and can be easily something. So what is it? Good solutions show
Clear.
Benefit and can be easily tested. Okay, so those, and this comes from a fair amount of research. There's all sorts of factors, obviously, in addition to that. So clear benefit covers a lot of the areas you talk about, yeah? If they're not convinced, it may be because there's no clear benefit. They might, the benefit has to be within the culture that they're operating in. So if you keep this one sentence in mind, it's a really great way to evaluate anything you want to recommend, be that in the US or be it in another country. Any questions or comments on that? And the thing is, obviously, there's a lot of sub-layers to this. What does it mean if it can be easily tested? That means they've got access to credit. It means they've got access to the inputs. So don't just take it on face value, clear benefit, and can be easily tested. But think about if I want, what does it mean to have show benefit? What show clear benefit? What's needed? What does it mean that it can be easily tested? So really think that those, if you keep those two factors in mind, you'll go a long way to success. Okay, we've got a picture. One of my favourite things to do. This is a picture of
I guess somebody fishing.
somebody fishing. Okay. So yeah, they could be fishing, and the rest of the picture is a crocodile, a shark. You're getting close.
Oh my
Oh
god.
no.
and I think I've showed you these ones before, and it's, you know, when we're doing workshops, when we're working with partners, it's all about trying to get more of the picture. Yeah. Talking to people, and just particularly when you're wanting to promote a recommendation, make sure you talk to people and say, does this if possible, validate it within the circumstances. Okay? I'm keeping an eye. Like I say, I'm going to be quick today because you've already had quite a bit, 30 minutes on the other side. When we look at the ways that you can deliver, so the bottom of page 2, the delivery options, there's obviously a whole bunch of ways. You can use fact sheets, posters, workshops, radio, blah, 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 blah. What do you think of those, very quickly, which do you think is the most effective way to introduce change and that leads to behavior change?
Personal discussion.
Personal discussion. Anything else? Anybody else?
I think it depends on the people, on what they have access to and what they use most, and what the type of technology that they're used to.
Okay.
I guess.
Rightio. So there could be a yes but in there. Okay. After, I would actually agree, and I'm going to show you a figure in a moment that suggests how people get most of their information. Personal discussion. What do you think is best next after personal discussion? Keep in mind those two characteristics of a technology. Yeah, got to have show clear benefit, and it has to be easily tested. So when you're thinking about how you deliver something and you want to show that there's benefit and you want them to be able to easily test it, which one do you think is next?
Field demonstration.
Field demonstration.
Yeah.
And I just hear that again and again. So for example, I was in China and I was talking to an extension person, and he said, Mark, I can talk to the farmers all day, but when I walk into a field demonstration, that's when they believe me. So it's this combination of field demonstration and personal. And here's just a finding from, this is where people got their information, not necessarily what they most believe, but just when you're thinking about, we're not only packaging a piece of information, but we've got to deliver it. So most farmers get their information from where?
Other farmers.
And that's the difficulty of extension. Because who are we trying to reach? We're trying to reach the farmers, and we often don't have capacity. But that's why the role of lead farmers or community leaders becomes so critical. Because it's most farmers in most villages, they're normally getting their information from other farmers. And so when you're thinking, so today's lesson is about developing the extension material, but I'd also want you to be thinking about, well, how do you do it? And so keeping in mind the role of others. Okay, let's push on. You can go through that. Okay, the Ask Me model. Okay, let's see. We're on the top of page 3. Let's run through it very, very quickly. And this is the structure we use for all our extension. It's just a framework. So who would you start with? The A stands for?
Audience.
Audience, right. So you the audience, and what do they need? The S stands for? I'm giving you no help with this one whatsoever because you're smart.
Solution?
Excellent. Solutions, yeah. So you know who the audience are, you know what they need or what they're interested. You say, I've got a solution for it. And then what's the K? The blank message.
Key message.
Message.
So it's about the key message. And this is important because too often people want to give too much information. And we're going to look at this a little bit more in a moment. Then we get down to the M, the form and delivery. So that's, I'm going to give you that one, that's the message. We finally get to what the actual message is. You know, how are we going to package it, what form, and how are we going to deliver it? And the final one, E.
Evaluation.
Evaluation, perfect. So that's what it is, you've got it there. So for the audience needs, it's who are they and what do they need, and, oh, I missed a word there, that should be what. Who are they, what do they need and want? The solution, what is practical and relevant to meet the needs? The key message, why do people need to know, what do people need to know to make the change? Not what's interesting, but what do they actually have to know? Then the message, how can the message best be packaged and delivered? And then the evaluation is about how can we improve each step. Okay, so we're going to have, what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of a quick look at each of those factors. So for example, when you're talking about the audience, these are the sorts of things you have to keep in mind. Literacy, education, wealth, what crops they grow, etc. It's pretty obvious, but very quickly, why do we have to consider literacy?
Because a fact sheet is no good.
Because a fact sheet is no good. It's going to influence how we communicate with them. Exactly. Why is education why is wealth important?
If you're introducing the technology and it's a little bit expensive, the poor farmers will not be able to afford it.
Perfect, yeah, exactly. So you need to be, that comes back to being able to test. It's got to be easy to test it. They have no money. It doesn't matter how good the technology is. And I've repeatedly seen examples where, yes, the technology is brilliant, but the farmer can't afford it. They don't have credit or they don't have the money. And so on the page there is, if you're in country, you'd be wanting to write a description of who are they. And then associated with that, you'd want to be knowing if there's more than one group. What do I mean by that? If there was more than one group, or can someone give me an example? What do I mean by more than one group? And how might that affect those associations?
Maybe age group,
Right.
gender.
So how would that affect?
So I think the material, for example, the extension material has to fit what the age group will
Right, so that's
appreciate.
That's one example. Somebody else got another? Just very quickly.
I have an example. In Hawaii, we kind of have two classes of farmers. One is like rich yuppie people who kind of buy a farm for fun, and the other is like Filipino people who are really barely even speak English and are farming a different way.
Perfect. Yeah. And so obviously mixing those two together, it might work, but probably not, because what's relevant to one group is probably not relevant to another. So that's why, it's not, and then each of those audiences then potentially have a different set of needs or interests. So step one in your extension is to start with your audience, just like it is when you're giving a workshop. Let's move along quickly. Solutions. Good solutions address the what? The true
Cause.
cause. So what's the problem in the picture? What's the cause of the problem?
Only one tree.
Is the problem only one tree, or is the problem too many dogs? Yeah, and obviously this is a nutso example, but if we take that and say, okay, let's consider the example of weeds. why might we have weeds in a field? And because of time, I'm just going to quickly run through it. So, it could be because the land preparation was ratty. Yeah, we just didn't do a good job. It could be because we introduced weed in the seed. It could be because, we applied herbicide, but we did it at the wrong time. We could have delayed planting. We might have weeds that are resistant to herbicide, etc. And so do you get the idea? If we don't understand the true cause of the problem, then we might be making the wrong recommendation. So for example, they might be using herbicide, but the weeds are resistant. So if we don't understand that, if we don't understand the cause of the problem is resistant weeds, then we're probably making the wrong recommendation. So when you're in your villages or whatever and you're trying to identify a recommendation, starting with the audience and what they're interested in, and then you're trying to understand what's the cause of that problem. So for example, a crop might be nitrogen deficient. So what might be the cause of that problem?
Too much of water for irrigation.
It might be too much water. Perfect. What's another reason that might cause nitrogen deficiency?
Not enough nitrogen.
Exactly, not enough nitrogen. And why might you not have enough nitrogen?
You've over farmed the land, so you haven't had a crop rotation.
Soil could be poor. Another reason?
Application of fertilizer that is inadequate.
The application method might be wrong, and one more that is very, very common in most of the villages you might work in. The farmers can't afford it. So you walk into a field and you say, well, it's obvious that the crop is nitrogen deficient. You just have to recommend they want more nitrogen. But the reality is the cause of that might be they just can't afford it. So I really recommend as you're going through this to keep that in mind. And so one of the tools that you can use is just this simple summary sheet that helps you think through identifying a good solution. So you start off and you say, here's my problem or problems, and you obviously would prioritize and say, this is the biggest one. You want to say, well, what's the true cause of that problem? And then you can begin to think about what options might be suitable. And so you think about factors like profit and effectiveness, etc. Clear? Good to go? Move on? Yep. I'm going to say it's not rocket science, but a lot of people don't follow this very simple procedure. And what I see repeatedly is people jump into the message. They don't bother with the audience analysis. They don't bother evaluating their solution. They just say, I got a message and it's a great message. And I want to communicate. Okay, so I want to very quickly on the key message. Yeah. So you'll notice a quote on the bottom of page 2. Who's it by? Einstein. And what does it say? Everything should be made as simple
as possible.
But
Not simpler.
And that's the real art of making good recommendations. Because if it's too complicated, they don't understand it. By the same token, if it's too simple, they won't understand it. And I think one of you before said, they're not trained correctly. That's why a technology might fail, and that's because it might be too simple or too complicated. So you've got to find that right balance. Okay, so here we have, so when we're thinking about some key concepts, the information needed for the extension message depends on the
audience.
Audience.
Perfect. Let me see if I've got that one. No, I don't think I did. 2, blank information means poor.
Too little.
Too much, too little. Perfect. Information means poor. I think that's communication. Yeah. Identify the essential elements. What does the user blank to know versus what is blank to know? What does the user
need to know?
Need to know.
Perfect. Need to know versus what is nice to know. And again, it sounds simple, but You know, a lot of my time is spent sitting with scientists, helping them understand the difference between nice to know versus need. Any comments, questions on that? We keep pushing on. Thumbs up. Excellent. Good. Thanks. Okay, so this whole idea that the key message is a balance between too much, too little, just right. Okay. Right, so the key message, the essential parts of the key message is the essential parts of the extension message. The minimum knowledge needed to correctly implement the technology. Okay, so what I'm going to do is get you thinking about key message, because this is something some people struggle with. We've got an activity there. So create a simple set of instructions on how to use a tea bag. Take 2 minutes. From start to finish, you've got the tea bag on the left and you've got the cup of tea on the right. What's the key message to get from the tea bag to a cup of tea? So jot down your steps and then we'll ask. I've got 7 steps, but that's not to say I'm correct. When you're ready, let me know. 5 steps to go?
I have 3 steps. But I was assuming the water was already boiled.
Okay, so there's an assumption there. One of the things one of the reasons I like this exercise a lot is because, particularly if you're doing a workshop and you can actually physically demonstrate, because a lot of people have this attitude, it's like, well, it's obvious. You know, you put the tea bag in the cup. So you take the tea bag as it is, wrapped up in the paper, and you throw it in the cup, and they go, oh. There's actually a step there that I have omitted. So let's start very quickly. What have people started with? And there's a couple of different orders you could follow. So there's no wonder. Step number 1, Pete, what's your first?
I guess they can be combined, but instead of assuming that the audience has a cup, a water source, some way to heat the water,
right?
A heat source, and then a kettle. I guess I said find all of that stuff. Good.
That's good. Okay, so the idea, our starting things, we need some hot water, we need a cup, and we've got the tea bag. Okay, let's assume we've got that, and let's assume our water has been boiled. What's the next? Brad, I'm going to pick on you.
I said unwrap the tea bag.
Perfect. Okay. Nicholas, I said place the tea bag in the cup. Place the tea bag in the cup. Perfect. It's really interesting, and I've done that example in workshops too. It's like, you know, open the tea bag, pour the water in the cup. So you're standing there with the tea bag on one side and a cup of hot water, and it's like they go, oh, okay, put the tea bag in the hot water. Okay, what's next? Timothy. So what stage are we at? We've got a cup, it's full of hot water, and it's got a tea bag, an open tea bag sitting in it. What's next?
I would say add sugar if you want.
I think you're actually one step ahead. There's a step before that.
So I actually, yes, my concept of the tea bag has the little string and the little.
It's got the
thing,
string and the
I
little
just
paper.
realized that it doesn't always have that. But I was gonna say you place it in and then put it on the outside.
Right.
It always sucks when it's
So
folded,
typically the next thing is remove the tea bag. Although some people actually leave the tea bag in forever, but most do not. And then, Timothy, we can think about sugar or milk or whatever. And then the other part of the critical message is, well, how long do you leave the tea bag in? You know, it's like, do you leave it in 5 seconds? Do you leave it in 2 minutes? So, you know, you can see something as simple as that has a very clear set of steps, and that's the basis of it. So if you're in a village, whatever it is, break it down into its simple, logical steps, and then that becomes the basis of it. Yeah? Okay, any questions or comments on that? How are we going for time? Actually, I think we're doing okay. Because I don't have a whole lot more. Okay, so we'll skip that. So let's, now, before we talk about the most effective way to do something is either face-to-face, and particularly face-to-face with a field demonstration. That's by far the most effective. But we actually always start by developing a fact sheet. Now, why do we do that? Why do you think we do that? We know the best way is to do a field demonstration, talk to people, but we start with a fact sheet. Why is that our approach?
To get our message clear and concise.
Perfect. If I had a chocolate that I could get to you, I would give you a chocolate. That's exactly it. By having to put the fact sheet together, it's the simplest form of the message. It's the most concise form of the message. And at the end of the fact sheet, and I think I have this here, the fact sheet is the how-to document, yeah, in its most summarized form. And if you have a fact sheet, a good fact sheet, someone should be able to read that and implement the change correctly. So that then becomes the version that you can use whatever. You can make a video, you can turn it into a workshop, you can use it for the basis of your field. But the fact sheet is that starting point. And so a fact sheet is about giving enough information so that whoever, your audience, can correctly change what they do. Comments on that? Good to go? Thumbs?
I have a question about the fact sheet.
Yes.
And some previous experiences with dealing with university and extension, they want to review the message and make sure it's consistent with, you know, their school or university message or with the latest research findings.
Yes. Yeah. So when we, you know, obviously today I'm running through this all reasonably quickly, but we actually have a fairly detailed, well, not detailed, but we have a very concise evaluation process. And so we actually evaluate a fact sheet on 3 factors. Number 1, we want it to be technically correct. Number 2, and so we will have people review. So is it technically correct? Number 2 is we want to know, is it clearly written? You know, when someone goes through, it might be technically correct, but you know, when someone reads it, do they understand what's going on? And then the third one is it not only technically correct and well written, but is it relevant to my audience? Because it could be technically correct, it could be well written, and people getting that no relevance to my situation. So we actually, whenever we develop this fact, so thanks for that, Chiara. Yeah, part of developing a fact sheet should be included in that should be some sort of review process. Good to go? Okay. Rightio. So the typical elements, you can see on partway down page 3, it should have a catchy what?
Title.
Perfect. It's got a catchy title. Somewhere there you say what's that, and it'll have pictures and diagrams. Just so you know, I mean, research shows that people when you have a magazine article or any sort of article, people are drawn first to the pictures and then they're drawn to the title. Or vice, they're very close. Sometimes titles, but more typically they're drawn to the picture. So not only have a picture on your fact sheet, but there's a couple of things to consider. One is, used in black and white, will it make any sense? You know, a picture can be beautiful in color, but when, you know, oftentimes you're going to have to copy it in black and white, so does it make sense? And the other thing is, under your picture, have some sort of a title that makes it clear, you know, it's relevant. Like, it sort of points out something about the fact sheet. So if it's about nitrogen fertilizer, you have a beautiful picture of a plant and a happy child, and the title is something like nitrogen fertilizer, you know, made this crop better, or something like that, but it ties in. Then the next thing you want is, down the bottom will be who to contact in the logo. You want to spell out what's the problem. Then you're wanting to say, why is it important? And this is just 1 or 2 sentences. Yeah? The what's the problem and the why it's important, that's responding to the audience and what they need and what they're interested in. Okay? And then the final bit of it is just the, what do you do? What are the steps? Yeah. And as I said, you want to consider black and white copying, and you're also, we use fact sheets as the basis to develop all our other materials. So if we're doing a video, we do the fact sheet first. Any comments on that? Great. Thumbs up. Yeah. Rightio. And then just one final comment about posters. And the main thing about posters is they tend to be less text and more informational. And what posters will typically do is they'll often present a new idea or a technology and let people know where they can learn more. So it won't necessarily be the full how-to. It can be, but oftentimes posters are used more as promotional and rates. So that's the general difference there. Okay, so final slide. Take a few moments to think about today, and then I'm going to ask you for one closing comment about today. So I'll give you 60 seconds. Let me know when you're ready. Yeah. Pete, good. Tim. Yeah, great. Okay, let's start then. Just because it saves time, so I'm going to pick on you. Yeah.
Make a fact sheet.
Make a fact sheet.
Before.
Make a fact sheet before anything. Okay, Brad.
Always try to get more information and know your audience. Because you know it's super important to know your audience when you're designing all this stuff right from the start.
Excellent, great. Pete?
Take your tea bag out before you add sugar. You need to consider what the problem is before you make a recommendation.
Excellent, well put. Yeah, nicely phrased. Timothy?
Field demonstration is one of the good way to deliver information.
Yeah, field demonstration is by far the most powerful, but obviously somewhat more complicated because of all the preparation, time, cost, etc. Tiara?
Like what are the change points and what information is needed to make those changes?
Right. Okay. Excellent.
I guess communicating simply and then also visuals if possible.
Keep it simple. Look at in here. Keep it simple and using visuals. Do you guys have anything else? Okay, thanks everybody. I think that's the end of my involvement with your preparation. It's been nice to get to know you a little, and good luck with your programs. And if you do have questions on any of these, then you can certainly get in touch with me through Julia and Alyssa and Emily. Yeah, and good luck everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for all your help and wisdom.
I don't know what happened today. I was all set, and I think if someone phones me just when my time is supposed to go off, then I don't hear my timer. So thank you for calling.
No problem.
Because I was sitting over there going, oh, I'll go and get my lunch now.
Yeah. Don't worry. Yeah, it worked perfectly because we had Brenda come talk about some stuff.